Hello and welcome to week 4. This is a fun week. You're going to be reading a couple chapters, chapters 4 and 5 in the book, and you're also going to read an article on the SIOP model. The SIOP model is a model that's been used for a couple decades now. It's very impactful, has a lot of research behind it, and it's been used predominantly for teaching English language learners. But as I mentioned in a previous video about universal design for learning, and other things that we tend to like culturally responsive teaching practices that we create for specific groups of students that wind up being beneficial to all students. You're going to find that when you're reading the SIOP article that this approach to teaching is really critical and benefits everyone. So really take very good notes when you're reading these chapters. And you'll notice that we are focused heavily in chapters 4 and 5 on looking at our own personal biases, right? What are our implicit biases? If you had me for Introduction to American Education, then you watched the documentary A Class Divided about the blue eye, brown eye experiment that Jane Elliott ran in her class for years, her third grade class in Iowa, and where students got to actually feel what it was like to be discriminated against. And so it's so powerful. If you've not watched that documentary, then please try to find the time or make a note to do it maybe during break or something. It's really worth watching. So the first couple chapters, you're really asked to reflect hard on your own cultural identity, how that informs the way in which you see the world, the way you interact with people, the assumptions that you make about others. And so like that, it was really interesting to me to read that statement that Zaretta Hammond made about how white middle class cultural communication style can be indirect and provide choices like, would you like to do this? Or maybe, how about, would you like to sit down? Or would you like to do this? Whereas other cultures are more direct. And so how, if you're from one culture, then how does that impact your interactions with others? Like, how are students from a different culture going to appreciate or disregard your expectations for them? So I just think that it's really important for us to reflect on those because we don't do that very often, and it really impacts how we interact with our students. So lots of reflection you'll be doing in this week. I love the idea of labeling your feelings. At some point, they give you a process for becoming more aware of your outlook on others and your perspective on others and your assumptions about others. And I think it's really important that they say to label your feelings and not children. Because a lot of times we tend to do that, right? Without even thinking. They're lazy. They don't care. They're not motivated, right? And we have to be really careful about that. Remember, they talk in these chapters, or you'll find that they talk about in these chapters about the negativity bias. There's a lot of research to confirm that. And in fact, a colleague of mine in Spain, Marc Clara, has done a lot of research on teacher perspectives. And those that tend to naturally take a more negative perspective on situations, like if a child is misbehaving in class, refusing to work, whatever, if a teacher tends to think negatively about the child in the situation, then that teacher tends to be very unhappy and dissatisfied with their work as a teacher. But teachers who take a more curious perspective and not label the child as problematic or the situation as problematic, rather take it as a problem to figure out. those teachers tend to be happier. And so, for your own job satisfaction, you want to intentionally adopt that curious perspective rather than let your negativity bias take over. So, I think that's really important for us to remember. Um, the chapters will talk a lot about the importance of building rapport and trust. So be thinking practically, how will you do this? Like, what are some things that you can do to build rapport and trust with your students? Um, how are you going to facilitate this amongst your students so that they start to trust one another? We want those amygdalas ready to learn, right? Remember, or if you haven't read yet, in those chapters they talk all about the fact that cortisol can block learning, right? So if a child is fearful or uncomfortable, then their amygdala is going to be firing off cortisol, which is going to block their ability to learn. But what can unlock that amygdala and allow students ready to learn? Endorphins. Where do you get endorphins from? Exercise, activity, active learning. So, when you're going to be thinking about lesson planning by the end of this week. And I want you, well, actually, you have started thinking about lesson planning because last week you went all through that lesson plan template. But by the end of this week, you're going to be writing a lesson plan. And so you want to be thinking about, how can I keep that amygdala happy, right? Keep those endorphins, that dopamine coming. And so you want to be designing instruction that's active, engaging, collaborative, where students are working together. This is all really important. These elements are really critical to helping students get the most out of your lessons. What else did I want to mention? You're going to read an article about the SIOP model, like I mentioned before. These strategies are fantastic. So take lots of notes on them. They will benefit all of your instruction. So if you're always thinking about, oh, I can't assume students know the context or have the necessary background information to really be able to appreciate this story, right? You students from different backgrounds, whether it's cultural backgrounds or just socioeconomic backgrounds, are going to have different experiences that will enable them to understand different contexts or not. And so we really need to make sure we're building that background knowledge as well, so all students can access the lessons that we're teaching. We want to be explicitly teaching vocabulary for all students in multimodal ways, so using pictures and supporting with lots of anchor charts. Reducing complexity when we're finding students are struggling, and that's any student. Like I said a minute ago, engaging in collaborative learning, getting students to help one another, and then providing lots of opportunities for students to practice and apply what we're teaching. So those are some of the really important concepts that you're going to be learning about this week. I want you to think long and hard on them. And then think, when you start lesson planning, think about a thread that runs through your lesson plan. And it starts with your standard. And whatever it is that you're trying to teach the students, you want to, from your standard will come your lesson objective, right? It's going to be part of that standard you're going to be teaching in that lesson. And from that, if we think about backwards design again, you're going to design your assessment to measure whether students have met your lesson objective. And then in between, you're going to be designing instruction and engagement that is clearly connected to your lesson objective, so that there's this clear thread that runs right through your whole lesson. Make sure that you incorporate a lot of good detail. Always err on the side of saying more rather than trying to be concise in your lesson plan. and strive to design active, engaging lessons. Like I said, use your resources, talk to other people, talk to your cooperating teachers, go out on the internet and see what you can find, what teachers have used to teach different concepts in engaging ways. And then make it your own and have fun.